All righty. So I want to thank everybody who's attending this study session for the city of Glendale. We're going to be covering the issue of 5G, which is small cell communication infrastructure, but the popular term for it is 5G. And we will be covering an array of topics which should give the viewer an overall idea of what 5G is, what it's going to do for us, what it's not going to do for us, and most importantly, the legalities of 5G and what we can do to make sure that we, the citizens or the residents of Glendale and the surrounding areas, are properly protected, since there has been a great deal of concern throughout the entire world about 5G and the potential effects that it could have on us, our environment, and so on. So let's get started. I'm new to this Zoom thing, so please be forgiving here. And before I do that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen because I didn't start the recording yet. I know there's an online recording, but I'm going to put one onto this computer too, just in case, because you never know. So let me get back to sharing the screen. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up with a short video that's going to give an overview of what 5G is. So let's sit back and watch this video as I admit people in as they come along. Here we go.
Every new generation of wireless networks delivers faster speeds and more functionality to our smartphones. 1G brought us the very first cell phones, 2G let us text for the first time, 3G brought us online, and 4G delivered the speeds that we enjoy today. But as more users come online, 4G networks have just about reached the limit of what they're capable of at a time when users want even more data for their smartphones and devices. Now we're headed toward 5G, the next generation of wireless. It will be able to handle 1,000 times more traffic than today's networks, and it'll be up to 10 times faster than 4G LTE. Just imagine downloading an HD movie in under a second, and then let your imagination run wild. 5G will be the foundation for virtual reality, autonomous driving, the Internet of Things, and stuff we can't even yet imagine. But what exactly is a 5G network? The truth is, experts can't tell us what 5G actually is, because they don't even know yet. But right now, there are 5 brand new technologies emerging as the foundation of 5G. Millimeter waves, small cells, massive MIMO, beamforming, and full duplex. First up, technology number 1, millimeter waves. Your smartphone and other electronic devices in your home use very specific frequencies on the radio frequency spectrum, typically those under 6 gigahertz. But these frequencies are starting to get more crowded. Carriers can only squeeze so many bits of data on the same amount of radio frequency spectrum. As more devices come online, we're going to start to see slower service and more dropped connections. The solution is to open up some new real estate. So researchers are experimenting with broadcasting on shorter millimeter waves, those that fall between 30 and 300 gigahertz. This section of spectrum has never been used before for mobile devices, and opening it up means more bandwidth for everyone. But there is a catch. Millimeter waves can't travel well through buildings or other obstacles, and they tend to be absorbed by plants and rain. To get around this problem, we'll need technology number 2, small cell networks. Today's wireless networks rely on large, high-powered cell towers to broadcast their signals over long distances. But remember, higher frequency millimeter waves have a harder time traveling through obstacles, which means if you move behind one, you lose your signal. Small cell networks would solve that problem, using thousands of low-power mini base stations. These base stations would be much closer together than traditional towers, forming a sort of relay team to transmit signals around obstacles. This would be especially useful in cities. As the user moved behind an obstacle, his smartphone would automatically switch to a new base station in better range of his device, allowing him to keep his connection. Next up, technology number 3, massive MIMO. MIMO stands for multiple input, multiple output. Today's 4G base stations have about a dozen ports for antennas that handle all cellular traffic. But massive MIMO base stations can support about 100 ports. This could increase the capacity of today's networks by a factor of 22 or more. Of course, massive MIMO comes with its own complications. Today's cellular antennas broadcast information in every direction at once, and all of those crossing signals could cause serious interference. Which brings us to technology number 4, beamforming. Beamforming is like a traffic signaling system for cellular signals. Instead of broadcasting in every direction, it would allow a base station to send a focused stream of data to a specific user. This precision prevents interference, and it's way more efficient. That means stations could handle more incoming and outgoing data streams at once. Here's how it works. Say you're in a cluster of buildings and you're trying to make a phone call. Your signal is ricocheting off of surrounding buildings and crisscrossing with other signals from users in the area. A massive Mimo base station receives all of these signals and keeps track of the timing and the direction of their arrival. It then uses signal processing algorithms to triangulate exactly where each signal is coming from and plots the best transmission route back through the air to each phone. Sometimes it'll even bounce individual packets of data in different directions, off of buildings or other objects, to keep signals from interfering with each other. The result is a coherent data stream sent only to you. Which brings us to technology number 5, full duplex. If you've ever used a walkie-talkie, you know that in order to communicate, you have to take turns talking and listening. That's kind of a drag. Today's cellular base stations have that exact same holdup. A basic antenna can only do one job at a time, either transmit or receive. This is because of a principle called reciprocity, which is the tendency for radio waves to travel both forward and backward along the same frequency. To understand this, it helps to think of a wave like a train loaded up with data. The frequency it's traveling on is like the train track. And if there's a second train trying to go in the opposite direction on the same track, you're going to get some interference. Up until now, the solution has been to have the trains take turns, or to put all the trains on different tracks or frequencies. But you can make things a lot more efficient by working around reciprocity. Researchers have used silicon transistors to create high-speed switches that halt the backward roll of these waves. It's kind of like a signaling system that can momentarily reroute two trains so that they can get past each other. That means there's a lot more getting done on each track a whole lot faster. We're still working out many of the kinks with millimeter waves, small cell networks, massive MIMO, beamforming, and full duplex. In fact, all of 5G is still a work in progress. It will likely include other new technologies too, and making all of these systems work together will be a whole other challenge. But if experts can figure that out, ultra-fast 5G service could arrive in the next 5 years.
Alrighty, so let's see. Did I do that? Are we back to the screen? Okay, let's get rid of this. Your screen sharing is stop. Okay, so let's go to get back here and let's see what's going on. There we go. Sorry, I'm new to this, so bear with me. All right, so come on. There we go. Okay, so that covers our 5G technology and how it works. So let's talk about some of the issues that we have. We're going to go over these with some presentations that are hopefully quick and comprehensive. And again, for those of you who have joined us since we started, the way we're formatting this is we're going to go through this entire presentation, and then at the very end there will be Q&A. So we encourage you to write down your questions as it goes along, and we will hopefully have people that can answer them. If something can't be answered, then we will definitely take that and pass it on to an expert and email it back or post it somewhere. So let's talk about the health hazards of 5G here. And in order to do that, we are going to present a short video, which is in the video.
I'm sorry, can we check and make sure that everybody was able to hear the videos that you were sharing?
Yeah, did everybody hear that last video? If anybody, just anybody randomly, if you can just...
It was not very clear, no.
It wasn't very loud? Okay, I'm going to try to turn the volume up on this one. I had it kind of in a mid-range there. So let's now listen to the health effects of 5G and small cell. So here we go.
And I spend my time full-time here in Washington, D.C., educating legislators regarding the health effects, the biological and health effects from wireless radiation. And part of our team is cancer epidemiologists, toxicologists, cellular biologists, all the people that the FCC do not employ. As a matter of fact, the FCC does not even have a health department. And the working around of health effects from wireless technology is really a sad chapter in the history of this country. And frankly, there's no nice way to say this. The wireless industry is lying about health, and they're lying about this technology and how it needs to be implemented. And coming from California, we have more insight because they're already beginning to install, so we know more about it. But I think this video is important because it's one of
really high frequency, so everybody thinks it doesn't go very far. But it's a really big pipe, and so that's what allows you to gain the
Well, wait a second now. Do we have the capacity to get that shown? No?
it's okay. It's only 30 seconds.
Okay. But I'm getting wavelengths that are bothering me. I'm kidding.
It's downloaded.
We're 3,000 feet away from our radio node. The cool thing about this is we did not move the radio node. It's pointing down to serve the customers in that area. But here, even 3,000 feet away, we're still getting gig speeds.
I think what's important about this Verizon advertisement for 5G is they make it very clear that their technology can travel very easily 3,000 feet. So that's more than half a mile. So what that means is they do not need to locate these transmitters so close to people. They do not need to locate them so close together to each other and not so close to human beings and other living things that will be affected by it. So they're really lying about the implementation of this technology. If you look, Councilwoman, if you look at this brochure here, this is from Verizon themselves, and this is regarding their insurance for their wireless devices. And what it says is we do not cover emissions or pollutants emitted by our wireless technology. But what's really interesting about this brochure is they define wireless radiation in all its terms as a pollutant themselves. And they say here, they do not cover and they exclude coverage for pollution, the discharge, dispersal, seepage, migration, or escape of pollutants. Pollutants mean any solid, liquid, gaseous, or thermal irritant or contaminant, including smoke, vapor, soot, fumes, acid, alkalines, chemicals, artificially produced electric fields, magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields, sound waves, microwaves, and all artificially produced ionizing or non-ionizing radiation or waste. So what's interesting is they define wireless radiation as a pollutant when it comes to them covering and protecting themselves in terms of liability. But when they want to force it into our communities and blanket our communities with wireless radiation, supposedly it's safe. And I ask you, Councilwoman, that all of the representatives from the wireless industry be asked very specifically to state on the record that this wireless technology is safe for the health and safety of our residents. I want that on record because according to their own printed literature, that's not the case. And that's a big issue because working around health effects, known health effects, is really the MO. Whether it's the FCC order, which says that we have streamlining, so we don't want to consider health, environmental issues at all, so they can just work around it. And what really concerns me very much is that what we're not talking about is that we are talking about implementation, and that in the signing of the MLAs, the public was not included. The normal process was not included. Our elected officials were not included. That cannot be the normal due process in this city, but that's what's happening. And if people are really so eager to have this technology and it's so great, why not include the community's input? Why not have their input on what's going on? Now, another lie of the industry, and there's no other way to say it, is that these are going to be small cells and they won't be too bothersome to the community. This is in California. This is what it looks like when upside down, when they install. And what the plan is to be 4G. This is going to be 4G, and then they're going to put a 5G on top of it. And that's the power source that can be the size of 2 refrigerators. And you can see it's about 15 feet from this woman's home. There is no way this woman doesn't get sick, either short-term with neurological or long-term with cancer.
Where is this picture? Could you?
In Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa?
Yeah, and it's in the, you can find it in an article. I can send you the article.
Okay.
So what we have is the industry clearly lying to public representatives, which should outrage you enough that you stop the process and you start over again, because this is a forcing and workaround, and that is the MO. And what you need to understand is no wireless device, and 5G included, is safety tested before it's put on market. No antenna is safety tested before it's put on market. They only have to fall under an exposure guideline that is a thermal guideline only, which means you're only guaranteed not to be heated or burned by your phone or your antenna. Anything below that over time isn't covered, and that's where the real health effects are. The reality is this is the greatest environmental and safety threat of our time, and instead of fighting back and pushing back, especially when we have safe alternatives like wired fiber optic to the home, we are spending millions and billions and just showing the way to the industry of taking advantage of us. This is when we need our representatives to represent. This is when we need our representatives to push back, and it can't just be you, it has to be the entire council. This is truly wrong. You can only microwave radiate people so much. And what you'll see in my packet is a report from the Army on millimeter waves looking at 350 studies showing clear biological effects below thermal, below our safety guidelines. And what's interesting about this report is they said the subjects of these studies, 30 to 80% of them were aware of it because our skin and our eyes are going to absorb a disproportionate amount of this wireless radiation. So you're talking about serious effects to our skin and our nerves venerate our skin, so you're talking about affecting our entire neurological system and exposing our eyes to military-grade wireless radiation, and our eyes have no natural defense against this. So you're talking about putting this in front of people's homes, forcing it into their rooms. This is absolutely absurd. We have video from the FCC proceedings with one of the 5G engineers saying themselves, look, we are forcing these directed beams into people's windows at levels that we do not allow in our labs, in our safety labs. This is absolutely absurd, and the FCC shrugged it off and said, this isn't an issue we need to be discussing today.
Okay, thank you. We have your testimony. I appreciate what you're talking about, but we do have over 50 witnesses.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Bouchon?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I want to speak on behalf of trees today because we're hearing a lot of things about humans, and I really am concerned about everything I'm hearing, as I'm sure that you are. But when I look through the guidelines, I realize it's going to affect also the tree health in the district. So one of the things that we were told, I happen to be one of 3 community representatives on the Urban Forestry Advisory Committee, and DDOT came to speak with us when we had our last committee meeting, and I appreciate that because it really let us know what some of the issues might be. One of those issues is that, of course, these small cells have to be put someplace on a street, and right now it's going to be in what we call, I like the name of this, the amenity zone. That happens to be where trees are planted now. So if there are cell towers, those small cell installations would go up in the same spot, in the same general area where the trees are now going. Okay, this is pretty easy to say, and they have said in the guidelines that a tower cannot go, a pole cannot go where there's an existing tree. That's pretty clear. But what is not as clear in the guidelines is what happens to future plantings. So let's say we want more trees along our streets, and I'm really advocating for that because I live close to Rhode Island Avenue. And we have a lot of very stately old trees that have been very aggressively pruned by Pepco over the years. And many of us live in neighborhoods where there are overhead wires. Once those trees come down, and many of them have been removed on Rhode Island Avenue, then only trees that reach a mature height of 25 feet are allowed to be planted. Now we're talking about trees that were 80 feet tall, and now we have a tree that can be no more than 25 feet tall. My solution to that is we can't just put a tree in where the tree box was for that large tree. We should be putting in 3 small trees to replace each of those large ones. Still won't really provide the same benefits. But here's what's going to happen. If one of those cell phone small cells poles goes in that space, there will be no tree in that space. So are we able to project where we want those trees? DDOT has said that they would be giving permits and that they would be careful about it. But the reality is we're talking about probably 50% of us live on streets that have power poles. When those giant trees come out, who's going to really be sitting there and saying to these companies, you can't put in a tower, and you can't put anything here because we're going to have trees. So I really think that we need to slow this down. I'm in total agreement with what everybody's saying. We need to protect our canopy. I want to read, and I'm going to quote this, because Lowell McAdam, who's a Verizon chairman, and this is exactly what you had said, sir, he said in an interview on CNN that Verizon's transmitters would work at 2,000 feet distance. So why is it necessary to have new poles put up, as allowed in the draft document, up to 6 on a block that's 750 feet in length, for example, if Verizon says that they can transmit over 2,000 feet? What's the point? So a lot of what has been written in these guidelines seems totally unnecessary, even if we weren't looking at some of the health issues. So to protect human health and tree health, we need to go back to the drawing board. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Warren. I really think this committee is not in a position to evaluate what 5G, where 5G is in its development, until somebody clarifies that, why we need it, and when we need it. I see you have your hand raised. I'm going to go to you next. And then on top of that, whether all of these limitations that might be put on it are not feasible. Why not alleyways? Why not on roofs? Why not limitations in terms of where it's sited in any event? And will it really just enhance communication on the street and not anything in the homes? I think these questions have to be answered in addition to the ones about what other ill effects may be caused. But as yet, and I guess this is for our telecom companies when they come forward, but also Mr. Modis, you have some views about this, so I'd like to hear them.
Those are excellent. Those are excellent questions. What's very important to understand is we already have 98% coverage in terms of communication between people. This is about the Internet of Things, things communicating with each other. And I would say we don't really need 5G. As a matter of fact, most of the capabilities they're talking about for 5G can be done through 4G and maybe even better. There's great limits in terms of the millimeter waves. That's why they haven't been used for decades. There's all kinds of problems with them. In order for the millimeter waves to work, they're going to have to put tremendous force behind them. And this tremendous force, and that's why you saw that huge power source over here, becomes very problematic, because as you increase these powers, you have certain biological effects, none of which are being taken into account. And when in doubt, we should leave it out. This is really, just like you're seeing here, about industry having their way, working around the process, and this is not really what people want. And what you know is, you probably know already, the National League of Cities is opposing the small cells rollout, as is the League of Mayors. So there are great concerns about this. The only ones who seem to really want 5G are the industry that are going to be benefiting. And how are they going to be benefiting? When they put a transmitter in front of your home, the design is it's going to be collecting data from up to 500 transmitters in your home. And they're going to be selling that data to the highest bidder, like Facebook does. This in terms of value, this far surpasses the wireless services themselves. That's why they're willing to spend $300 billion rolling it out. But what it does in the same time is seriously and intimately violate your privacy. The other issue is cybersecurity. With all these transmitters collecting information on us wirelessly, we know that wireless transmissions are easily hacked, and there's cybersecurity problems. So you're talking about violating people's privacy in a very intimate way, jeopardizing the cybersecurity of our nation, and exposing us to intense millimeter wave radiation in addition to the current radiation that we have now. And Councilwoman, I think it's very important to understand that with 4G, you're going to be putting these transmitters, which used to be located miles away from people, very close to the home, like here. And those transmissions are designed to travel miles. And the beginning of that trip is going to be going through residents very close by. These 4G transmitters have absolutely no place so close to people's homes. The 5G transmitters, while they're designed for shorter transmissions, you could understand why they would be located closer, but not this this close to humans, but the 4G transmitters, and while our studies show that wireless radiation is clearly carcinogenic, neurotoxic, and genotoxic, they only look at one source, and these studies are very carefully designed to only consider one source. But what you're talking about here is now two sources, very strong sources, lower frequencies and higher frequencies, hitting people with a soup of wireless microwave radiation. So our bodies certainly are not designed to adapt to any of this. And the reason why low frequencies and these high frequencies are such a problem is we're electromagnetic. Our cells are electromagnetic. Our cells communicate, reproduce, and transmit electromagnetically. The idea that these billions of waves per second passing through our body are not going to have an effect on us is true fantasy. They absolutely have an effect on us. We are electromagnetic. So is our heart and brain.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you say that the National League of Cities and the League of Mayors oppose 5G technology, or is it just that they oppose the FCC's order?
They're opposing the FCC order, but specifically they're opposing S3157, which is a bill from Senator Thune, which is going to shorten the shot clocks, streamline, and then, by the way, if you get sick near a wireless transmitter,
Okay,
you have to go back to...
my question was pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Are they opposing the 5G technology, or are they just opposing the FCC order and perhaps this bill that has not been passed?
Both, but that bill only pertains to 5G and small cells.
Okay,
So
but-
therefore, they oppose 5G transmitters. That bill only concerns itself with the rollout of 5G.
Okay, that's true that that's the subject, but do they oppose 5G technology as such, per se?
Based on their opposition with 3157, that is to facilitate 5G, I would say yes, they do. And we do know that they're opposing the FCC order.
No, I know that, but I wanted to find out, because
But
I
the
thought you
FCC
said they were opposing 5G
But the FCC
technology.
order is specifically about small cell rollout, too.
I know that. Well, I could have something that's about dogs, but then if I worry about a regulation about dogs, doesn't mean I'm opposed to dogs. So there's a distinction, but okay.
I hear what you're
just wanted
saying.
to- I
And
just
then
wanted to check that.
One thing I didn't mention was Dr. Beatrice Gollum from California, where I'm from, who's an expert in electromagnetic radiation health effects, wrote a letter regarding the rollout of small cells, and she cited 360 scientific citations pointing to the biological and health effects. This is a current professor expert in the field.
Could we have a copy of that? Could you give
That's in
it-
your packet. I
Okay.
just didn't have a chance to mention it along with the Army report. I think it's very illuminating. And for
then-
the industry to
and
say...
then- And then, okay, because like you can't go on and on.
Sorry.
The other thing is, in my packet, is there also a copy of that insurance form that you made reference to? Because I'd like to have that as well.
Yes, one
Okay.
from AT&T as well.
Okay, perfect.
So-
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much
all.
for having this hearing and
Yes.
asking such good questions.
Okay, well, you want to add one thing?
You were saying, yeah,
One
you were
brief
saying that,
thing?
you were saying that you wanted to know more about what 5G is. And again, I want to point out that it kind of means different things to different people. It isn't one thing. They're still trying to decide what its use is going to be. There was a conference in Barcelona this year that was for mobile carriers, and they were all talking about what's the killer app for 5G going to be. All that means is the 5th generation. It's an adjective of a technology. They don't know what it is. And a lot of the things that you hear about it, everybody's afraid to be a Luddite and say, oh no, I don't want modern things. We want to be modern, but making 911 systems work. It's not going to make any sense. If it's only aimed at people on the street, anybody inside who's trying to call 911 from a wireless thing has to have a whole separate distribution system. What they said at this conference is that what they think is going to be the really important thing from 5G is the business model, not any application that it's used for. And what the business model is it puts the expense of putting in that last link to customers on the users rather than on the telecoms, because it's expensive to run wires to every apartment in a building. So what they want to do is they want to do everything wirelessly. This isn't just for your phone. The biggest use right now is watching movies on your phone, which will be great if you're on the street. But they're still trying to work this out.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all very much. And could we have, if we don't have a full set of what you have, please make it available to us. Thank you.
And one thing, Councilwoman, in there is a copy of an appeal from 220 scientists and doctors asking for damages our cells. So we have the mechanism, we have the scientists saying it's a problem, the FCC saying it's safe without a health department or health professionals, and we know they're a captured agency. We have the industry pushing this. I very much want you to ask them to go on record in saying this technology is safe for our women, our children, our families that are going to be exposed to this, because they know it's not safe. They're protecting themselves in terms of liability, but they have no interest in protecting us. This is outrageous. This is the most important function of local government, to protect our health and safety, and it's being called into action now.
Thank you. And thank you all for your testimony.
Okay, so let's move it on to the next video. This is from the United States Senate. It's a short one, but very important. So here we go.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this hearing. We've heard from a lot of witnesses, from you today and others previously, about the very important potential of 5G technology. It promises to bring us a new era of connectivity with internet speeds as much as 5 times faster than what we have today, with much lower latency, and that's all a good thing. But 5G, as you well know, also uses higher frequency waves that don't travel as far and will rely on a network of hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of small cell sites. And the question then is, are there any health implications, any public safety implications to those additional sites that are likely to be located close to homes, schools, workplaces, and closer to the ground? Correct?
Correct, Senator. Yes.
So in December of 2018, I sent a letter to FCC Commissioner Carr asking him to cite for me recent scientific studies demonstrating the safety of this technology. What research has been done, where has it been published and compiled? He has essentially failed to do so, and just echo the general statements of the FDA, which shares regulatory responsibility for cell phones with the FCC. If you go to the FDA website, pretty unsatisfactory. There basically is a cursory and superficial citation to existing scientific data saying, quote, the FDA has urged the cell phone industry to take a number of steps, including support additional research on possible biological effects of radio frequency fields for the type of signal emitted by cell phones. I believe that Americans deserve to know what the health effects are, not to prejudge what scientific studies may show, and they deserve also a commitment to do the research on outstanding questions. So my question for you, particularly Mr. Gillen and Mr. Berry, how much money has the industry committed to supporting additional independent research? I stress independent research. Is that independent research ongoing? Has any been completed? Where can consumers look for it? And we're talking about research on the biological effects of this new technology.
Thank you, Senator. And I think, thank you for your focus on the issue. Safety is paramount, and as you alluded to, we rely on the expert agencies, we rely on the findings of the FDA and others as to the requirements to keep all of us safe. There are no industry-backed studies, to my knowledge right now. Happy to visit with you as to what opportunities you think there needs to be more studies, and we're always for more science. We also rely on what the scientists tell us.
So essentially, the answer to my question, how much money? Zero.
I can certainly follow up with you, Senator. To my knowledge, there's no active studies being backed by industry today.
Anybody else know of industry commitments to back research, fund it, support it, to ascertain scientifically the health effect.
Senator, I'm not aware either, but I do know that with small cells especially, you're going to have lower power levels. And of course, as from a carrier perspective, you want to be able to manage interference so that that interference is the lowest interference possible. So I would think that some of those studies or some of that information could be utilized in looking at the health consequences. But no, I'm not aware of any.
So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here so far as health and safety is concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Senator Tester, after 2 hours of testimony, I'm sure you'll agree that it's not.
All right, so let's hear from a child on the effects to children. As you heard from the telecom companies and the senator asking about what studies has been done and what safety, telecom said we rely on the FDA. The FDA say we encourage the telecom to do it. So as he said, we're just flying by the seat of our pants. So let's listen to this from the state of Oregon, and it's some testimony about the effects on children by a child.
That brief summary of what happened to me.
Sure.
So I started feeling really sick when I was 9 in 4th grade. At school, I would sometimes feel dizzy and my papers I was writing on would seem to move back and forth. At bedtime, I'd be scared to go to bed because once I lied down to sleep, I would get very, very nauseous and sometimes I would even vomit. I developed horrible anxiety and a rash on my face, which I sometimes still get when I'm around Wi-Fi too much. My family took me to at least 7 doctors that I can remember, maybe more, including Dornbecker Children's Hospital. Each doctor referred us to another doctor or diagnosed me with this or that and would give me some medicine, but none of them really helped much. For a whole year, I was ill and we couldn't figure out why. When my mom finally realized what was making me sick, she asked my school if they had Wi-Fi, and they replied, yes, Wi-Fi is available. So it turns out I was sitting right underneath the new Wi-Fi router they had installed. I switched schools to the only school in Eugene that doesn't have Wi-Fi, which is Waldorf, and this school only goes through 8th grade, and I'll be graduating this spring. So now we don't really know of anywhere I can go to high school next fall because all of them have Wi-Fi. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for your testimony. It means a lot.
I'm her mother.
Okay. So now we are going to move on to Nanor. If you can jump in here and tell us about children's health and behavior and so on. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So thank you. For those of who that don't know me, my name is Nanor Shaheen. I'm a board certified behavior analyst. I work with children on a daily basis. I'm the clinical director of a behavioral agency. I'm also a board member of nonprofit organization called Armenian Autism Outreach Project, also a board member of nonprofit organization called To Be Happy that works with individuals with autism and related disorders. I just wanted to give that short background so that you understand that I work with children on a daily basis for more than 8 hours a day, and I deal with them and their behaviors, and I hear their concerns, the parents' concerns, and there is a lot that I can hear and I can relate to the situation that we're talking about today, which is 5G and radiation, wireless in general. There are a lot of research that can back up the fact that 5G is not safe and just wireless technology is not safe for children. You're going to receive this presentation as we mentioned at the beginning of this. So I don't want to read from the presentation, but there has been a lot of research on cancer, the fact that wireless affects the behavioral health and mental health of the children. There is a direct connection found through research between the behavior, which is the hyperactivity, and engaging in challenging and aggressive behaviors such as tantrums, heating, lack of social interaction, and the wireless. So that part we already have covered on the research. We do understand that most of the research has been done, not necessarily specifically for 5G, but my problem, as a professional in the field and as a person who deals with children on a daily basis, and most of the children that I provide service to, we're providing applied behavior analysis service, which is called ABA. It's very specific service and therapy system for children with autism and related disorders. Most of the children that we cover under our services, they don't necessarily communicate directly. So that being said, I have this responsibility of being their voice as well, and I take that very seriously. It is extremely important that we have to have at least safe research to say that this 5G is safe to introduce, and if it's not, we should not risk it. That's my entire point here, and we do have research showing the direct connection, so there should not be any push on this. I don't want this to be misunderstood. Thank you, Aura, for switching that. There's a very clear picture here that you can see that a brain of a 5-year-old child can get more impact from wireless than an adult. And I find this picture the most, effective to show you how this can affect them. Actually, it was very interesting. As we were getting prepared for this presentation yesterday, I was visiting a case. One of my, children that I provide services, he's only 4.5 years old. And about 3 months ago, he was on iPad for almost 10 hours a day, if not more than that. And he was extremely hyperactive. We requested 40 hours of services for him for behavioral therapy. And I worked very closely with family to make sure that we can reduce the screen time. Again, I'm not saying this is the only variable. We obviously worked on other variables as well. But right now, his screen time is reduced to 1 hour a day, and he only receives that 1 hour if he's not engaging in other problem behaviors. I can honestly say that we are preparing to reduce the hours of services. There is a huge difference in his behavior. From 40 hours of need for services, we're switching to only 10 hours a week because he's doing great. I mean, he learned how to communicate better. Obviously, when he was on the screen time for more than 10 hours, he was so motivated and he was so enjoying the screen time that there was no motivation for him to even communicate with other human beings. And again, I'm not saying this is the only issue, but this definitely plays a role. If that child can see and watch movies faster and gets more wireless, waves through 5G, obviously there's going to be more behaviors, there's going to be more hyperactivity, and it's going to be much difficult for us to minimize that and redirect them to social interaction. Our only hope for social interaction was when the children were at school, actually. And obviously in this situation, during this COVID-19 pandemic, the schools are closed, so the social interactions are extremely limited. And obviously the screen times automatically increases, which is a huge problem. I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention that there are a lot of research, showing the direct connection between wireless and health of children, especially the cancer and behavioral and mental health. So there's another short video that I would like us to all watch. And then after that, during the Q&A, I will be more than happy to answer any question about this. Thank you.
Okay, so now let me get to that other video here. So it's going to be, oops, hold on a second. Okay, so we're in testimony, cell phone radiation effects on kids. Here we go.
Did you know that every day we are surrounded by invisible electromagnetic radiation, From microwaves, dishwashers, computers, televisions, power lines, wiring in the building, to cell phones. They all produce electromagnetic radiation. You know what? Raise your hand if you own a cell phone. Now guess what? These days, every kid wants to have a cell phone, but cell phones give radiation, and if exposed to too much radiation, you may get a tumor or cancer. Do you know that nowadays kids start using cell phones as early as the age of 5? Now guess what happens to their brains when they use cell phones at such an early age? They get 5 times as much radiation than adults do. The reason it's easier for radiation to reach a kid's brain is because a kid's skull is thinner than an adult skull, which lets a lot more radiation to the brain of a child. When radiation goes through your body, it can kill cells, and if those cells don't heal properly, they might become cancer. Today, I want to give you some tips on how to protect yourself from this radiation. One way is to keep the phone 6 inches away from your face. Use a speakerphone or a headset. Also, it would be better if you could text as often as possible so you don't have the phone close to your face. Every time you're about to call someone, and I mean every time, make sure you're not in an area with weak network signal, because when the signal is weak, your phone will work a lot harder to get a better signal, and therefore, it will give out a lot more radiation. Also, never sleep with your cell phone, because when you're sleeping and the cell phone is near your head, it's going to be throwing radiation through your head all night long, and that's never good. Some people even say that when you have a cell phone close to your ear, it's like holding a mini microwave next to your face. We are still learning about the risks that cell phone radiation can cause. A lot more research still needs to be done. It's actually just like smoking. Many years ago, we never knew that it caused cancer. Till years later, researchers discovered that it did. The reality is that we live in a world full of technology. We can't escape it. It makes our lives a lot easier. But at the same time, we need to be smart about how we use it and make sure that we protect ourselves from these unnecessary risks that can harm us.
Alrighty, so let's move on now. Nanor, is there anything else that you wanted to add to that before we move on to the next subject?
Not really, not at this point. I'll be happy to answer or talk about more details at the very end if you have time.
Okay, so now let's move on to what does this do for our property values and so on.
AT&T is the nation's fastest 3G network, so you can download faster on your smartphone than Verizon.
With 4G from Sprint, I can download files up to 10 times faster than 3G.
Upload 10 photos in a minute. Verizon 4G LTE.
Get ready for more ads like those. The wireless industry is in a race to roll out 5G service. Now, 5G is supposed to be up to 100 times faster than current data speeds. Could have used it on Amtrak yesterday. But it requires cell phone tower equipment to be closer to users than ever before. And that is causing outrage and alarm in some neighborhoods as antennas go up around the homes. Tony DeCopel is here with both sides of the conversation. Tony, lots of chatter about this. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. There's outrage, but there's also excitement. I mean, 100 times faster. But get this, wireless companies in the U.S. say they'll have to install about 300,000 new antennas for the rollout of 5G. That is roughly equal to the total number of cell phone towers built over the past 3 decades. The faster network could create new potential for work and play, but it's also leading to new concerns.
Go. At a lab in New York, Verizon invited us to meet some of the entrepreneurs developing tools to run on the next generation of wireless technology.
How important is 5G to your mission?
5G is extremely important.
Jonathan Reeves demonstrated his product, Arvisio.
As you move around, the object stays fixed in space.
Look at that. That's amazing.
Allowing users in different locations to interact with 3D images projected through a lens.
Today we can do this using Wi-Fi technology, and we can do it using landline technology, but of course you're then tied to particular locations. With 5G now we can begin to extend this, so we can actually begin to start doing this on building sites. We can start doing it on the factory floor. So it really opens up a whole new world.
But before this world can become reality, this one needs to change. 5G requires the installation of new equipment across the U.S.
So this pole here is 5G. This is the future right here.
You got it.
Every wireless company is working to build its own 5G network. Melissa Arnoldi leads AT&T's efforts.
If you don't already have one of these in your neighborhood, they're coming.
That's absolutely right. They're coming.
She says 5G uses high-frequency waves that support faster speeds, but don't travel as far as current wireless frequencies. So instead of relying on large cell phone towers spread far apart, they need small cell sites that are much closer together.
We're going to use our existing infrastructure today, whether it's light poles, whether it's street lights. We're going to make sure that we don't make it obtrusive to our customers and to the citizens.
Yet some don't share the enthusiasm.
The cell towers are called small cell towers, but they're not so small when they're in your front yard.
Donna Barron is protesting plans to convert light poles in her Montgomery County, Maryland neighborhood into small cell sites.
This will cause cancer.
She was one of several people who raised health concerns at a government hearing last month.
This stuff is untested on kids. Their safety is not certain. These untested technologies are, at this time, not ready to be unleashed into our lives.
Cell phone equipment emits radiation, but research on its health effects has been inconsistent. According to the National Cancer Institute, a limited number of studies have shown some evidence of statistical association of cell phone use and brain tumor risks. But most studies have found no association.
If you lose this fight and a pole goes in right here, are you going to move?
Possibly.
Either way, Barron says she fears property values could plummet when 5G equipment pops up.
If a tower goes up right there, what's going to happen to the value of that home?
It could drop 20%.
And not only for this house.
Right, for that house, that house, that house. And then pretty soon you go around the curve and there's another cell tower. They're all through this neighborhood. So it's going to devastate the neighborhood.
Arnoldi insists her workers are focused on safety, pointing out they live and work near this equipment too.
Do you have any 5G antennae in your neighborhood yet?
No, not yet. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. It's coming soon, though. It's coming soon.
So I'm guessing from that reaction, then you're very comfortable with it rolling out in your neck of the woods.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, look, this is our...
Wireless carriers have announced plans to roll out 5G service to a handful of cities later this year, but don't get too excited. To really take advantage, you'll need a 5G-enabled device, which probably won't be available until next year.
So our current phones aren't 5G ready?
They're not 5G ready. The pole outside your house might be 5G ready, but your phone is not.
Yeah, gonna have to upgrade. Tony, thanks.
All righty, so let us move on to our next subject. So as you can see, that's what is believed to be the possible outcome with 5G and property values. Judy, thank you for joining us. You're almost going to be on in about 15 minutes, and I'm glad you're with us. This is, by the way, this is Judy Bruce joining us right now. She's one of our presenters, and she and I actually serve on a coalition, the 5 Free Topanga or 5 Free California, the legal committee. So she's very in tune with all the legalities, and she'll be presenting something on that in a little bit. Okay, so let's move on to we're not going to talk about what we can do. We're going to talk about, actually, it is what we can do, I should say that. And this is the part that I'm going to start presenting. We're going to be covering some city ordinances that protects us from RF and EMF. The picture here is courtesy of Tony, who is also present here. And this was taken not too long ago at 2224 East Chevy Chase Canyon. And what you're seeing is you're seeing a 5G installation, and that down that's hanging off of the pole, which broke away, by the way, it was mounted before. The brackets just didn't hold it, is the power supply that was talked about in the beginning of our presentation. And what drives the small cells is a very big refrigerator. That's what drives it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my screen over to my presentation so people that can read along. I'm not going to be reading this whole thing. In fact, I'm only going to read the first page, and then we're going to kind of browse over. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide the city of Glendale with examples of actions taken by other cities that focuses on keeping cell antennas away from homes, and when possible, the stated purpose for doing so. These actions are strictly protected by U.S. Federal law, 47 U.S. Code Section 337A, and in the case of California cities, which apply to us, by the California Supreme Court decision, San Francisco versus T-Mobile, which expressly upholds your inherent local police power includes broad authority to determine for purposes of public health, safety, and welfare the appropriate use of land within a local jurisdiction's borders. So keep that in mind. So keeping antennas away from home is highly desirable as it is highly desirable as a purely aesthetic argument. No one should have to look outside their window and see the imposing cell antenna staring back at them. Keep cell antennas away from homes is even more desirable when you consider that the above referenced California Supreme Court decision defined aesthetic conditions to include negative health consequences and safety concerns. The antenna outside of the homes on the 2200 block of East Chevy Chase Canyon in Glendale has caused negative health consequences, even if you consider the anxiety caused by our extremely high exposure. Additionally, the antennas are without doubt causing safety concerns, as you see. Somebody could have been right under that and fallen right on their head, probably could have even killed somebody. Additionally, the antennas are without doubt causing safety concerns for many Glendale residents, as such clearly evident by the residents that have spoken out against these antennas, as we have many times. Sometimes it feels like we're talking to deaf ears, but I think after tonight's presentation, that might change because we're going to empower City Council. So please note the requiring minimum distance of 500 feet that we've been told about, or even 1,500 feet from any resident, does not prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting the provisions of personal wireless services. This is most clearly evident by the statements that we heard from the Verizon at the very beginning of our presentation in the video, where they said, well, demonstrating 5G antennas, which have the shortest range, work very well at ranges of 2,000 to 3,000 feet. 4G antennas have even a greater range, well over a mile. The City of Glendale should also note that none of these ordinances have been challenged in court, further evident that the city does indeed have the authority to regulate the use of public rights of way in a matter that these cities have. Please also note that any action taken by the city that has the effect of limiting the number of antennas installed and increasing the mandated distance from one antenna to the other, or a distance from an antenna to a home, necessarily reduces the exposure from the antennas, whether or not environmental effects from the basis of said action. So there are 5 ordinances that we're just going to browse over here. I'm not going to read this. Again, this whole document will be in the packet, so you can read this very carefully. It was written by actually a legal expert that studied all of these ordinances and picked out the parts that are most relevant and the most commonly issues that a lot of city councils, and it's not just Glendale, Burbank does it also, they get misleaded by these experts telling them their powers are limited. Judy's going to be covering that in a little bit, and it should really be enlightening. But so Petaluma, California, ordinance number 2662 NCS. The ordinance is very short and simple. The city recognizes the residential areas are no place for cell antennas and passed regulations keeping them at least 500 feet away from homes. I'm not going to go into the basic requirements. You can read over that yourself after. So all the verbiage is here, and there's also links to these ordinances. So any city that wants to study these and adopt them, it's all available for you. Mid-Valley, California, ordinance number 1304. We've actually presented a copy of this to the city of Glendale, the city council, as I think we did Fairview, the entire thing. So Mid-Valley has an ordinance which is a bit more complex and opposes two regulatory actions, and it suggests to employ, and we suggest to employ by the city of Glendale. Like the city of Petaluma, Mid-Valley recognizes cell antennas do not belong near homes and outright restricts placement of cell antennas and in residential zone areas. For areas where cell antennas are allowed, Mid-Valley created an order and list of preferred locations and configurations. And there's a copy of their chart there. So you can go over that. Let's see. Hey, Judy, can you mute your microphone? There's a noise coming in over on you, and then you can turn it back on later on when you come on, if you can hear me. Okay, so let's go to Calabasas, California, ordinance number 2012-295. The ordinance was passed by the city of Calabasas, and another ordinance that creates the minimum setbacks of 1,000 feet between cell antennas and homes, as well as parks and school. The ordinance also sets an ordering list of preferred locations configuration similar to Mill Valley. And this is pretty much all we've been asking the city of Glendale to do as a minimum. Of course, there's going to be a lot more that the city of Glendale can do after we get done tonight, because you're going to learn about what legalities have been discovered, and there's actually some lawsuits in place that are going to help you guys set some precedents. Okay, so Sonoma, California, ordinance number 07/2018. Sonoma's, again, another city that restricts the placement of cell antennas in residential districts and requires a minimum setback of 1,500 feet between antennas. And this is really important because, as we heard Verizon talk about, they can go 2,000 feet without any issue. So this really reduces the amount of antennas that can also be installed because there is no need. Additionally, the rather lengthy ordinance places a large number of requirements for the applicants. So that is Sonoma, and there's the text. And then we go to Elk Grove, California, ordinance number 19-2019. The Elk Grove ordinance is fairly unique in its approach to restrict placement of cell phone antennas near homes. The city opted to disallow placement of cell phone antennas immediately adjacent to or across the street from residential front yards. This is good news for most Elk Grove residents, as the antennas will only be installed at the end of the street or behind homes that are at the end of a lot. However, it is very unfair to anybody living in those small percentages of homes, and will cell antennas construction be allowed? Another problem with the ordinance is that there is a potential loophole in section 23.94.050A6. To avoid this loophole, it is our group's opinion that the last 9 words "as to a particular small cell wireless communication facility" should be left off. So these are, I believe that was the last one. Those are the 5 ordinances. And again, all this material will be part of the packets that we will be making available. So now, Judy, are you there? What would you suggest with Judy? Are you there? Oh, she's muted.
Yes.
Oh, you are there. No. Hang on, there you are, Judy. Okay, wonderful. Okay, Judy, how would you like to proceed? Would you like me to run that first video, or did you want, why don't you introduce yourself first of all? I'll run the video of you and Travis.
Okay.
And then you decide where you want those other 3 short videos, whether you want me to play those first or after you speak, probably before, I would presume.
Yeah.
Or do you want to play those first to give people a little update of what we're dealing with, because they're very similar to what's been presented to Glendale City Council. So it should be very reminiscent of what actually the City Council have heard. Should I start with those?
Yeah, go ahead. Start with those.
Okay.
Ara, can you introduce Judy Bruce, please?
Yeah, I did already introduce her when she first came on, Elena.
Okay, all right.
So people know who she is, and we haven't had anybody added on since she came in. So I'm going to switch this over to my video screen. Oh, that's not how that works. Okay, let me get this first video. These are all short videos, and these videos are actually things which have been presented to Glendale City Council, or I should say topics, more than anything else. So let's start with this first one, and we'll move from there.
I have a lot to unpack, and I'll start with Professor Marshall's comments. He said that the FCC regulations are gone. They're not. He said that the ground rules have changed. They haven't. That the FCC rules are not struck down. In fact, to the extent that the courts have directed the FCC to go back and review it, that is something that is for the FCC to do. But in the meantime, the court did not strike down the FCC rules. So the rules that were in effect in August are the same rules that are in effect today, which are the same rules that were in effect a year ago. So from your perspective as commissioners who have taken an oath to uphold the law, just like I've taken that same oath as an attorney, there's still the law. Now, there was a comment made that the FCC regulations are not law. In fact, they are. The FCC is the expert agency charged by Congress with enacting the rules in federal law, and this specifically, as was cited earlier, 332C7, that's the federal code. So Congress doesn't write operational rules. They have expert agencies, regardless of how we may think of the expert agency, and I have my own quibbles with the FCC, but to the extent that they are the agency delegated by Congress to enact the laws that Congress has passed, that's what they do, and those rules have the force of law. You know, when I was studying for my doctorate, and I had to go through all of the court cases, every single court case that was both published and unpublished that was discoverable on the issue of RF and home values and all of that. And the courts recognize the FCC. I mean, there just is no question about it. And nothing has changed. Moving on to some of the speaker comments. The speaker comments were generally all about RF, and I get it. But there were a couple that require some additional unpacking. Ms. Swanson talked about the Ripton case where Sprint removed the tower, and they did. Subsequent to that, if you continue down, you'll find that, in fact, what was determined to be the cause of the cancer is the fact that there was an old Nestle's plant that was nearby that had discharged carcinogens into the ground. And that's the causal link there. Did Sprint remove the tower? Sure. But was that the actual cause of the cancer? Based on published reports in the Sacramento Bee, Modesto Bee, and the CBS, their toxicologists have put it back at the cause to be Nestle's discharge of toxic materials. Another grounds for appeal by the appellant is that an approval would be inconsistent with ADA and a violation of the Fair Housing Act. The ADA does not control here, and the reason is that under the ADA, there's an exclusion that says essentially if application of the ADA would cause a violation of a different federal rule, then the ADA is not applicable. Here, the telecommunications of 1996 came after the ADA, and Congress did not carve out ADA in the 1996 Telecom Act. Therefore, the exclusion under the ADA applies. As for the Fair Housing Act, it's simply not triggered by this project. As for NEPA, we continue to hold the position that what the court did in the DC Circuit makes it clear that NEPA is not applicable to this project for the reasons that we've already discussed.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, council member.
We keep using that term. I would guess I'm uneducated. What is NEPA anyway?
National Environmental Protection Act.
And what exactly are the implications of NEPA? You're saying it doesn't apply to this?
Correct.
And why is that?
NEPA applies to a limited number of projects, primarily to projects either federally funded or on federal lands, and this is neither.
We're here because the City Council of Simi Valley has been telling the public that they have to follow this regulatory order, 18-133, where their hands are tied under the 4G, 5G rollout, and the people must abide by it and accept it, or they're going to be fined and whatnot. Well, upon investigating the so-called regulatory order, it's not a federal law that they're bound by.
So who's going to be fined for what again?
The City of Simi Valley is making the claim that they will be fined if they don't follow the FCC regulation number 18-133.
Which kind of forces through the 5G.
Yes.
Okay,
they have to implement it or be fined.
So you're looking to kind of hold up and make sure it's safe before they proceed.
I want to get rid of it totally. Now, here's the thing. If they're saying there's a law they have to follow, they have to show proof there's an actual law. Now, the law that they claim didn't come from them. They came from another source, another congressperson. Sent them a letter about the issue. When I investigated and did research on it, turns out Regulatory Order 18-133 is an administrative rule where the FCC regulates telecommunication companies who want to sell internet, cable, and phones to the public. Nowhere in there is there any kind of regulatory rule that applies to Simi Valley or any township anywhere in America. It's not a law at all. So we're here with the mandamus for the court to make a determination that one, this federal regulation is not law, and two, it's not required to be followed by Simi Valley or any city, and three, that we want them to abandon it. Because there's no law supporting it.
And what happened today in this
hearing?
Today,
the opposing attorney filed what's called a demur, which means our complaint was deficient, so it should be dismissed. But in a demur scenario, the judge can give you leave to amend it if it's deficient in any way. But what happened today was the judge stated that I didn't have any standing because I don't live in Simi Valley, I live in Santa Barbara. And two, there is a federal law, you have to follow it. And three, the city council can do what they want, basically.
but there's not really a federal law, is there?
Correct.
Okay, so something smells bad here.
Oh yes. So we're gonna amend the mandamus to include the notes and evidence that city council did say that. And he asked me in the hearing, well, where does it say they said their hands are tied? I said, well, you already said the pleading. It's in the mandamus. Well, I can't find it. Where is it? So I had to go find it in the pleading. It's page 4, paragraph 11. I can read it to you. He goes, no, I got it.
Well, he should know that.
He should have read the pleading before the hearing today.
Oh, boy.
Which he did not.
So what's the next step?
Next step is we amend the pleading to include the evidence city council has been making in statements that their hands are tied and they have to follow this federal rule. And we put it together and we file another amended mandamus with his direction and include that and to see what he does with that. And he's already made the determination. I don't have any standing to speak, but he allowed me to speak today.
Right. So who comes in next time?
Well, no one needs to. All they got to do is say, I stand on the merits of my pleading before the court as submitted, and sit down.
Okay.
And he makes a ruling based upon the pleadings.
Okay.
And Jonathan Cramer was here, which was quite interesting.
And Jonathan Cramer is who?
Jonathan Cramer was the
consultant. The attorney consultant for the FCC.
Oh, that's right. So he's kind of been pushing 5G. Or
yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He's getting paid a good amount of money.
What did he do or have to say or anything?
He was not allowed to say anything today, but he is mentioned in our pleading.
He was observing in the courtroom today.
Yes, and he is mentioned in our pleading that we are requesting that they abolish his contract with the city for attorney misconduct. Because he was misleading and manipulating them for financial gain.
Right. And using some deceptive information about his credentials and whatnot?
No. He's using false information about the regulatory order.
Okay.
Calling it a law.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so Judy, I'm going to stop the video now because I want to give you more time, and also just so you know, because the audio on that is not so great, maybe you can kind of go over what Travis and you were talking about, so it's a little more understandable, because there was a lot of background noise going on there.
Yeah, right. Just so I want to make sure that we get through the videos of Cramer.
We whatever videos we have, we played of Cramer.
No, I mean going through commenting about them.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I'll comment about our case at the end.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay. So the direction that we take in this kind of an issue is we seek out to find the law, and then you make your argument around the law, not the facts as stated by an attorney. And that's why they call these court actions lawsuits and not fact suits. So the evidence of what Cramer states should be clearly written in the law. And according to our legal researchers' work, it is not there. Okay, it's not there. And that's why we did the lawsuit. And additionally, he really gives only half the facts is what he does. And I'm going to be really specific on the falsifications that he made. So Cramer was pretty central to our issue here with our case. In it, we declared that we felt what Cramer states to city councils and county is that they must adhere to the FCC order or face punitive sanctions, including, but not limited to, fines and lawsuits by the FCC. On information and belief, we believe that Jonathan Cramer has deliberately falsified the facts and the law regarding the FCC order for some financial gain while manipulating the cities to accept the alleged FCC order 18133. None of the language in that order is imposed upon any city or county. That is what we found. And fortunately, we've got these falsehoods captured on video, as you saw. So, and we have transcripts of it as well. So on August 26th, we didn't show this video, but he's pretty much a cookie cutter and he repeats a lot of things. But I gave a public comment on August 26th, I believe it was in Thousand Oaks, and I included in my public comment that the FCC regulation is not a law. So he does his rebuttal, and this is what he says. He said, several people tonight have talked about the fact that the FCC regulations are not enforceable upon the city. That is wrong. I'm a lawyer. That's wrong law. Your city attorney can talk to you about that. The practical reality is FCC is delegated by Congress to create regulations to enact and enforce the intent of Congress. In this case, Congress set out 47 Code of Federal Regulations, abbreviated CFR, USC 332C-7, which talks about what our authority is and what our limitations are, and the FCC has created rules to enact that. He said, we believe that some of the FCC rules are overextended in terms of their coverage, and on behalf of the League of California Cities, we are suing the FCC currently to roll back some of the regulations that are even more overreaching that should have never have been conceived that the FCC would try to do. Let me just, before I want to just insert something here. Cramer should have known that League of Cities have no standing in a case like that. And what you're going to find out shortly as I go through this is that the Telecommunications Act is an administrative law, and it deals with, it's only between the industry and the FCC. It has nothing to do with us. So the fact that there's a city, a League of Cities, is there's no standing for the city, so it's a bogus suit. So to continue, he says, so in terms of the FCC regulations, they are enforceable against the city. Now we got to, I'm going to rebut his rebuttal. This is our legal, Travis, responding to that. He said, Cramer quotes USC 332C-7, enforced at 47 Code of Federal Regulations. He does not state with particularity which part of section of the CFR. By looking at the index of the CFR, it shows that Title 332C7 is enforced at 47 CFR parts 4, 12, 20, 22, 24, 25, 27, 30, 51, 52, and 90. Now, here's the key. None of these CFRs apply to the public at large. That is big. They apply to the telecom companies and how the FCC administers the administrative law against them. Okay, so that's pretty big. Now, just a little commentary here to lead into more of some of the comments. It turns out that, by the way, is the city council there? They're listening, they're here? Oh, yeah, you're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, we have, I believe one of our city council persons are here, and also the assistant city attorney is on with us too.
Okay,
So she can relay some of this. She'll understand it better than anybody else, I guess. But they also know that they can watch the recording after, and we're going to make that available to them. So you're not speaking just to this. You're going to be speaking to a lot of people.
Right. So they will play it for them.
Yeah, definitely. They already asked me about that too.
Good. Perfect. Okay. It turns out that local governments have been systematically fed false information by industry-paid legal consultants. You know, Cramer, he bills himself as independent, and he is anything but independent. He spent 16 years as a RF engineer with the the FCC, telecommunications industry, so that they can acquiesce to the unprecedented, unlawful land grab, as we know as 5G. This has put our local governments under a spell, thinking that they have no power or responsibility or accountability regarding these 5G deployments. But this is not true. We have, as you already started to see, unravel some lies, and we'll explain the truth, including specific court cases and precedents that the telecom industry does not want local governments to know about. But in the meantime, the telecom industry's propaganda campaign that we know there's this propaganda campaign because we hear it over and over again. The FCC, we have no rights. We don't want 5G either, but our hands are tied, and the FCC sets the policy. They set the law, and we hear that so many times. So we have been trying to tell city council members that the FCC 18133 is not a law, but their industry-paid consultant tell them it's law over and over and over. And to prove that they have been fed this information, fed and it's false, we recently received documentation, and this was included in as an exhibit in our lawsuit, from the Legislative Council of Law at the DC Law Library of Congress, which confirms what we have been telling council members. We asked them if Title 47, which is the 1996 Telecommunications Act, if it has been enacted into positive law. And they confirmed that this is their wording exactly. They confirmed that Title 47 has not been enacted into positive law. Now, this organization is one of our most trusted sources because it is the office responsible for compiling and publishing the U.S. Code. Now, what is positive law? Positive law is a federal statute that constitutes legal evidence of the text of the law. It's another term is called the black letter of the law. Okay, very important. So we have proof of that. So another important, when you're arguing this issue, another important area, as you say, if someone says you have to follow the law, you ask two questions. Show me the law, and in other words, does it exist? And does it apply to me? The fact is that many attorneys are lazy and they're just not going to do the work. And we did the work. And the regulatory orders do not apply to the public. Authority of a federal act requires a regulatory rule. Otherwise, it's not a general statute. Title 47 is an administrative law only between the telecoms and the FCC. That is just so key to understand. So interestingly, the opposing counsel to our case is trying to say that positive law is the same as prima facie law. Here's the deal. That argument overlooks the distinction within its own rule. If they're the same, then why even have the distinction? So this doesn't make any sense. Okay, so the next, the video of January, that was in January of 2020, that's where he talked about the ADA, this was an appeal case, ADA and the NEPA. Okay, so let's talk about those two.
Which I just want to interject. He said the same exact thing in Glendale City Council because we brought that issue up. And we have a video of him doing the same exact, it's almost like a copy, just a different venue.
About the Title
Yes,
46.
ADA, NEPA,
ADA,
and housing, yes.
Yeah, right. In fact, you sent that to me and I watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. So he has been caught, and it's so fortunate we have all these videos. He has been caught in a material, probably negligent error when it relates to these two items. It is unbelievable that he does not know that Section 255 of the Telecommunications Act incorporates the ADA. So, in fact, he really put his foot in his mouth when a couple of competent attorneys showed up for the appeal after he did his slides. So, okay, so what the ADA, we put this, what I'm about to read, is in our lawsuit. It's part of our lawsuit. The appeal that Cramer was talking about to the hearing, he said that his wording, ADA does not recognize radio frequency as an ADA covered event, end quote. That was incomplete and potentially misleading. In fact, the United States Access Board, quote, recognizes that multiple chemical sensitivities and electromagnetic sensitivities may be considered disabilities under the ADA if they so severely impair the neurological, respiratory, or other functions of an individual that it substantially limits one or more of the individual's major life activities. There are two evident mischaracterizations in that statement. RF is not a term that the ADA nor the complainant defined, and quote, covered event is incoherent when you're referring to a disability. Further, the case, that Cramer, I don't even like to call him doctor, I just call him just Cramer, quotes to support what he said was, quote, Furstenberg versus Santa Fe, New Mexico. The fact is, it was reversed. It was reversed on appeal to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. I have a case number here, and which remanded the case back to state and local instrumentalities for resolution as intended by the TCA. So the chairs, the fact that they accepted this evidentiary support as part of its approval is material error and is subject to legal challenge. Cramer advised the chair that residents' complaints should, quote, really be directed at members of Congress, end quote. But Congress has already dictated a system of, it's called cooperative federalism, which preserves dual regulatory authority for state and local siting decisions, subject to only minimal federal limitations. The United States Supreme Court said about TCA, quote, Congress ultimately rejected the national approach and substituted a system based on cooperative federalism. State and local authorities would remain free to make siting decisions. They would do so, however, subject to minimum federal standards, both substantive and procedural. The chair should not have accepted Cramer's summary. Okay, so now continuing on with this, the 255, here's some more information that Trevor Marshall, are you familiar with who Trevor Marshall is?
Yes, Trevor, I've heard of Trevor Marshall.
Okay, just for the city council members and assistant city attorney, Trevor Marshall is a quite unique individual. He's a doctor. He was part of the Bioinitiative report. He is probably the only professional who is both an expert in biological and RF engineering issues. So he can tie the two together. If you're just one or the other, they can't really blend them, and he does a beautiful job of that. So these are his comments. He said the material that the ADA and what Cramer went over was totally incorrect, and you can see from Section 255 of the Telecommunications Act, which Congress added to incorporate the ADA into the Telecommunications Act here at the Cornell Law Library, saying that Congress did not consider the ADA and the TCA interplay is all surely an error. If just an error of a magnitude of an expert lawyer could never make, he never should have made that. Here is the ADA Access Board publication summarizing the TCA integration of the ADA. And also, here is the ADA Access Board publication suggesting recommended accommodations for electromagnetic sensitivity. The key goal is generally to find a deployment at an abated signal level for electrosensitive individuals. In this case, would be readily achieved by locating the transmission equipment further from the sensitive individual. And as for saying that the fair housing, a basic civil right, is not triggered by this government action, unbelievable, unbelievable. So here, just briefly on what the Section 255 says of the TCA Act. So the Telecommunications Act of 1996, a comprehensive law overhauling regulation of the telecommunications industry, recognizes the importance of access to telecommunications for people with disabilities in the information age. Section 255 of the Act requires telecommunications products and services to be accessible to people with disabilities. This is required to the extent access is, quote, readily achievable, meaning easily accomplished without much difficulty or expense. And the right in the section 153 and 255 under definitions says access by persons with disabilities, and it's right in there. So it's definitely part of it, integrated into it. And so they also have recommendations for accommodations. So that they have to be in a appropriate area and not, put them in a disadvantaged situation. Okay, so all right. So now let's see. Okay, here we go. Reading the law. Here's some more comments from Dr. Marshall. He says reading the law takes skill and a lot of time and effort, and not everybody does it well. So when Cramer gives advice to your city, you really have to really take a close look at it, which is what we're doing. We compare the instructions of Cramer with the description by it's called the intervener of the DC Circuit case, who was actually in the courtroom. And he says, I'm an attorney, and I was an intervener in the court proceeding. I work closely with the National Resources Defense Council. This is about NEPA, by the way. I'm sorry, I meant to. Now we're talking about NEPA. Okay. And the Federal Communications issued a rulemaking order on March 30, 2018, to expedite the deployment of a densified 4G, 5G. The FCC order exempted all of these facilities from two kinds of previously required review: historic preservation review under National Historic Preservation Act, and the environmental review under the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. On August 9th, 2019, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit vacated the FCC's rulemaking order. The legal effect of vacating FCC's rule necessarily means that the prior rule was reinstated, and any actions taken on the basis of the vacated rule have to be reconsidered under the terms of the prior rule. The prior rule required the FCC to apply NEPA to the construction of 5G facilities. Consequently, it is not lawful for any such facilities to be constructed without prior NEPA review. While other actions of Congress and the FCC have attempted to circumscribe this county's authority, see, Cramer was working off the old version there. The county's authority over the construction of the 4G, 5G facilities in light of the court's decision, the county is nevertheless within its rights in requiring the sponsors of these 4G, 5G facilities to provide evidence that the FCC has conducted a NEPA review prior to approving any request for construction. Inasmuch as the court's decision vacated the FCC rule, the decision applies nationwide, and its effect is not limited to the District of Columbia. You heard Cramer say, nope, it is only the District of Columbia and Indian reservations or whatever, historic.
Right, we heard that in Glendale also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just totally falsified. Now, I don't know whether the guy is ignorant, but I think he's a bright guy, and I think it was intentional. I mean, I hate to say it, but
yeah.
Yeah. At the local level, let's see. Okay, I just said if I had time. These were just some more comments.
Let me ask you this, Judy, for the sake of the assistant city attorney, where can she find it? What's the case number of that lawsuit so she can look it up?
Oh,
because she has access to all that stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't have it right here.
Okay, well, we'll have to get that to her so she can pull up a copy and study that, because I think that'll be very useful for them to be more empowered. Sure.
Okay.
So is there anything else you want to add in closing? We're going to go to Q&A. So there may be some questions to you from the people that are attending right now.
Yeah. Why don't you go to questions? Yeah.
Let's go. Okay, so let's go to Q&A. Nana, you want to turn your microphone on so you're ready for this? So.
Sure, I'm ready.
You're always ready, I know. Here we go. All right, so that was our legal. What the next slide is here. Is there another slide? Oh, somebody wants to get in. Oh, Tony is out again. Tony keeps escaping us. Okay, here we go. So we're on to Q&A. So if anybody, hey, Nana, let me do this. I'm going to turn you into the host again.
Okay.
And then this way you can control the Q&A or whatever you need, whatever is, how does this work? Oh, I see. I got to go here. I got to turn you into host. So I'm turning it over to you, which means my screen is going to turn off, obviously.
That's fine.
So here you go.
Be on a Zoom.
Okay, there we go. And you're on, or you should be. Oh, how cute. It still shows I have Q&A.
Okay, that's
Do I have to stop sharing? Or
no,
just let it go?
Fine. Just let
Okay.
it go. I mean, if I
All
can
right.
be the host, I'm the host. That's fine.
Okay. So let's open up the floor to anybody that wants to turn off their mute and ask some questions.
Or if you feel more comfortable, you can type and I can read the question if that's easier.
There you go. You can text them.
No questions?
Well, that works for me too. Is there anything else that any of the presenters that are here, between the three of us, want to add? Feel free.
So there's no questions? Because
there
no
seems to be no
questions
questions
so far.
I have a question. Once it's in, it seems that Glendale has all the 4Gs installed. Is there a way to uninstall, or the instruments are installed, or the towers?
So the 5G. Judy, do you know anything about that?
well, that's our lawsuit. That's part of what we're asking for.
So they will have to remove them, or what happens?
We're asking them to remove them. That's part of our lawsuit.
Yeah. So that's in the city of Simi Valley, and this is depending on, again, we're hoping that the city council will be empowered by this information, and we don't have to go through a lawsuit. We're in the process of actually retaining Travis to do what he did for Simi Valley if there's a need. But again, we're hoping that the city is going to be able to do some maneuvering and regain their powers, basically, or take back their power and get rid of this stuff.
Right.
They worked very hard during the lockdown. For 3 months, they've been installing everywhere. So is it doable?
Well, we're gonna try. We're trying.
I think we're not gonna stop until we get somewhere. So that's all we can do at this point.
Right.
I'm so sorry. All right, can you stop the screen because it'll be easier for me to.
I see. Okay, you are sharing. Stop sharing. There it goes. I stopped sharing.
Thank you.
You're on. Oh, I see. It shows the comments and stuff. Okay.
Okay. If you want me to go over
sure.
lawsuit, no more questions. Okay. So we basically what it was. This was a summary. We're exercising our First Amendment rights, and we're exposing our grievances for this exposure that we have. We use what we call a writ of mandamus. Can be state or federal. In our case, it was state. And it's a petition to demand that the officials abide by their sworn oath and determine what law exists to allow these poison delivery systems on us. In our pleading, what we claimed was that none of the Telecommunications Act Title 47 was published into a positive law. Was not backed up by the Code of Federal Regulations, which that is what gives it the force against to put it on the people, and there wasn't anything there that even mentioned the people. And that the defendants are insubordinate to their oath of office and have shown a willful, reckless, and intentional disregard for the rule of law. Another legal claim that we're making in our lawsuit is that they are in violation of the Anti-Commandeering Doctrine. And our pleading includes several U.S. Supreme Court case precedents proving that Congress cannot directly compel states to enact a, quote, federal regulation which violates states' rights, sovereignty, and or exceeds Congress' jurisdiction authority. And what this does is it prevents accumulation of unauthorized powers by Congress. We've also asked the court to declare the rights, it's called declaratory relief. A declaratory relief is what law exists and if they apply to the situation. And we clearly point out, as I mentioned earlier, evidence that there is no law that mandates their products on us. Additionally, our mandate requests the following judicial determinations: that the FCC order 18133 is void on its face. Number two, that the defendants had a constitutional duty to abide by their oath and failed. Number three, that with respect to the implementation and erection of the 4G, 5G small cells in Simi Valley to be null and void pursuant to the Anti-Commandeering Doctrine. Number four, terminate the FCC order 18133. Number five, abolish its contractual obligation. By the way, does Glendale and Burbank, do they have a contract with Cramer?
I'm not sure. He is a consultant. I think he did tell us once he's under contract, so he's limited to what he can talk to us directly about. So I presume, based on what he said, that yes, he must be under contract.
He is good, and that is, it's totally. When Paul McGavin heard that, he came unglued. He says, "This is just not right. You don't do that." Okay, so we are asking that that contract be abolish it with respect to for attorney misconduct. And we believe that he falsified the facts and the law for financial gain by manipulating the city council, that they have to follow the FCC. Number six, order the immediate removal of all 4G, 5G small cells already erected and vacate immediately any ordinances approving or adopting FCC Order 18133. So in summary, basically what we're saying is that a wireless ordinance has no basis in law and must be abolished. And also illegal is assaulting our city with these dangerous small cells and must be stopped and existing cells taken out. And we're not asking for monetary damages. So according to the ruling elite, we are presumed, this is not in our lawsuit, but just adding a comment. According to the ruling elite, we are presumed to know the law. It doesn't matter to them if we don't, because ignorance is not an excuse. It's our obligation and our responsibility to learn the law and how it applies to us. They count on people, and Cramer counts on people to be uninterested and distracted and mentally conditioned, that our alleged government does the thinking for them. So in closing, we think that our case is strong because we have the law and we have the evidence on our side.
Thank you so much, Judy. I want to add something that so people understand. We're not against technology. We're against unsafe technology. And that's really the bottom line. As it was presented in some of the videos that we showed, there are alternatives to 5G, 4G, wireless, and so on. And as it was very clearly stated, the 5G of things is not for people to communicate. It's things to communicate with things. And that's something that we don't need. Who needs that are the manufacturers of goods and the people that make money off of mining our data and our things. There was an issue that we didn't really cover, and it has to do with privacy and invasion of privacy, and again, the taking away of our rights to privacy. And that's something that 5G is definitely intended to do, because they're spending a lot of money, but they're not making it from us, necessarily from our monthly service charges. They're making it from really mining data, and as it was very clearly stated in one of the videos, they sell it to the highest bidder. And my data is not for sale, and I don't think anybody would want their data to be sold without their consent or some sort of compensation. So again, we don't oppose technology. We understand that it's a necessity for us to advance as we have been, but unsafe technology to the detriment of our environment and to future generations and to our health especially. We just had, sadly, a friend of ours who just turned 50, the mother of 3, and she passed away yesterday morning of cancer. And We don't know what environmental issues were involved in that, but again, as we know, based on the National Toxicity Program, Wi-Fi, 2G, 3G are known to cause cancer in mammals. And this is something that we definitely have to take very seriously, because making it to the age of 50 and being, she was diagnosed 6 weeks ago of having cancer, and it had already gone too far. So she got her treatment, they thought she was getting better, and then she ended up in ER on Thursday, and they had to pull the plug. So this is something that is very real, and as you heard about children are the most affected, as Nanor said, and presented. We have to look out for our children also, because they are the future. We're not the future. We're done, but it's our responsibility to make sure that we pass on a healthy planet to them. And 5G is definitely not going to help us in that responsibility that we should each and every one of us have upon ourselves. Thank you.
Wait, Ara, what kind of cancer did she have?
We don't, it was in her bones. I'll tell you later, it was everywhere. We're not even sure.
Oh, they didn't know where it got started?
Some growth on her arm is where it started, as far as we know.
Melanoma. Sounds like melanoma more.
Oh yeah, Nanor, you heard what it was. It was melanoma. There was melanoma involved, I think they said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely have that conversation privately. I also have to be respectful to the confidential information.
Yeah, I'm not asking for names.
No, I understand. Even the information, I mean, I will be more than happy to share later on a different conversation.
We don't even have all the details yet. We just heard about it yesterday morning.
No, that's fine. I've just been hearing lots of cases where people all of a sudden, it's spread everywhere, I mean, like before, it starts from the breast or from prostate, but now it's like they just discover, oh, it's all over your body,
Right. They figured that out. They found out about it. They thought it was in the brain and the arm and somewhere else. And then within a couple weeks, it was everywhere. So, and I don't want to say that it's 5G that caused it, but we did actually have our rollout here, or the switch turned on a couple weeks ago. I got a notification on my phone that 5G is active in Burbank, and it's active in Glendale, and it's actually active in a lot of places. And one thing that I will say, and it was in the video, they talked about how our eyes are not protected from this millimeter wave radiation. And I've been noticing my eyes are burning and have been burning for a little while now, and it's something kind of new. And there's also, I'm very sensitive to sound, and there's been this very high frequency around 7,000 hertz, a sound that's pretty constant. Sometimes it gets much louder than other times. And when we go out of town, the sound is diminished greatly. And in fact, we're going to go to there's a couple RF free zones. There's one in California, in Northern California. We're planning on taking a trip up there to see whether we can still hear that sound or not, and whether it's something that we have, a condition we might have, or whether it's actually some sort of radiation. But that radiation there, it wasn't in Glendale a month and a half ago, 2 months, when you moved in, we got a place for her.
Yes, it
that
was
specifically very quiet. It was extremely quiet, and then within a month, the sound started there, and now it's really strong.
And I was diagnosed by migraine, which is getting worse on daily basis, actually. And it wasn't as bad in February when I just moved, but after that, it's progressing almost on daily basis.
Yeah, and as a person who doesn't get headaches, I'm a person that doesn't get headaches. I've been getting morning headaches when I wake up. The pressure, there is actually pressure. And that started right around the time, maybe a couple of days before the announcement that actually it happened after, I think, the announcement of 5G network has been turned on. So their radio waves and radiation are very serious. We pick it up, our body.
What we have to really worry about is you've heard about the 60 gigahertz?
Yes.
What that's going to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that affects oxygen.
Yeah,
they're not using it yet. They're only, I think the most they're at 14 gigahertz, 14, 15 gigahertz. I've already gotten a meter to measure the
Did
higher
you?
stuff. Yeah. So that's another thing that we're
Yeah.
moving off into a different area.
That's why we got to get rid of it though, so
Yeah.
they won't
Oh,
be
yeah,
around to
definitely.
turn on.
Definitely. So it's 9:02 already. So I think we're going to close out the meeting if there's no further questions. This will be made available. This recording will be put online and made available at some point. And we're going to be putting together a packet for anybody that wants in a PDF form they can download and print out of all of the materials that we presented tonight, and then some. And hopefully our intent is to, again, educate the public at large. And this doesn't just apply to Glendale or Burbank or it could apply to any city or township in the United States of America, because all of this applies to them. So hopefully we'll be able to empower city councils and community leaders and so on to be empowered to uphold their oath of office and uphold the U.S. Constitution, and in our case, the California Constitution, which truly is a tool that I believe our city council members in Glendale very much want to have that power to be able to do that and to be properly advised. And hopefully this will happen after this video is made available to them all. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and we will hopefully be hearing about some new and exciting changes that are going to be advantageous and help all of us in the future. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.